Hi everyone. So my talk is about balance support and control of an ankle-foot exoskeleton. And the aim of this work was to develop balance supporting controller for an ankle-foot exoskeleton that cooperates with the human inside. So let's first talk about how humans control balance. So for example, when you're walking and you suddenly pull someone to the back, what you will see is that this person might adapt foot placement, but as another mechanism, it will control the center of pressure on the stance in. And for example, if you would record activity of one of these ankle muscles, iliotibialis anterior, you will see after a pull, it will largely increase the activity. And if you would do inverse dynamics on this, around the ankle joint, you can see that you have suddenly a reduction in this ankle plantar flexion moment. So here on the y-axis, the ankle moment as expressed as a percentage of the gait cycle, in gray always unperturbed, and in blue after the pull. Now this change in ankle moment depends on the magnitude of the perturbation and is the opposite when you push someone. So then you see this increase in plantar flexion moment. So the goal of our work was to develop a computational model that mimics this human neuromechanical system and shows this behavior after perturbations. So here we used the bio-inspired approach to achieve this goal. And I started by using this neuromuscular model proposed by Hartman and Geyer in 2010. And this model is mainly driven by local reflexes around the ankle joint during stance. So for example, for this model, it contains heel-tight muscles. And this heel-tight muscle for the calf, the soleus, is driven by force feedback, local force feedback. And when I tried then to optimize these 5 control parameters in this simple model to match the ankle moments we observe after perturbations, I get this. So essentially, if you compare these two figures, you can see that with this model, with only local feedback for the ankle muscles, we can't match this behavior that we see in experiments. So we are clearly missing something. Now, on standing balance, there's a whole literature on the fact that people control maybe their muscles after perturbations proportional to center of mass positions and velocities. And the idea there is that you integrate sensory information maybe to estimate your center of mass motion, and then in a long latency feedback loop, you control your muscles to control balance. So that's why we added 2 feedback loops to this control model, one for the plantar flexor, the soleus, one for the tibialis, based on long delayed, 60 millisecond delayed feedback of center of mass velocity. And then when you optimize these 7 feedback gains, so only 2 additional gains, you suddenly can start to explain the behavior after pushes, after pulls, and also during normal movement. So the next step was then to implement this controller on a ankle-foot exoskeleton and to test whether it really assisted the user in balance control. So we implemented the controller, and very simply, or very short, we measured the ankle angle with the ankle encoder on the exo, which is an input to the controller. We detect whether the leg is in stance or swing based on the force plates. And we cheated a little bit, and we used the motion capture to estimate center of mass velocity, which we did based on this marker in the pelvis. And then subjects walked with 3 different controllers, so the default reflex one in blue, always, the slightly adapted with center of mass feedback in green, and in minimal impedance. And then we did the protocol, so they first walked unperturbed walking with the exo, just to adapt to the whole setup. And then we did 3 perturbation trials, with the 3 different controllers, so with both pushes and pulls. And here you see an example of someone walking with the exo where you suddenly pull them. Now, yeah. And we then evaluated whether the exoskeleton assisted the user in balance control. And our hypothesis was that if it assists the user, this increase in muscle activity you observe after a perturbation, it should be smaller if you apply assistance with the exo. So this, we evaluated this first. So here you see the activity of one of the calf muscles, the soleus, during normal unperturbed walking in the black dotted line. And when you suddenly then push them, you see this increase in calf muscle activity, here for the minimal impedance controller. And we computed like the average muscle activity during a 500 millisecond time window, just to get some outcome, which you can see here in the bar plot, with the dots, the different subjects. And then, indeed, for our controller, the green one, with center of mass feedback, you can see that this increase in muscle activity is indeed lower compared to the default reflex controller and the minimal impedance controller. A very similar story for the pool perturbations, but there we see a large increase in tibialis anterior activity, and this increase is smaller for our reflex controller with center of mass compared to the default one and compared to minimal impedance. Our second hypothesis was that maybe subjects will also adapt their motion in response to the exoskeleton assistance. And here we took a very simple outcome. We just computed the displacement of this marker on the pelvis during the perturbed single stance phase. That's what you can see here in this graph, and here this is the displacement. So if you push someone, you move to the front of the treadmill, and this forward motion is a bit similar for all controllers. If you pull someone, there we suddenly see that you move a bit less to the treadmill in a reflex center of mass controller compared to the default one, but not compared to the minimal impedance one. So in conclusion, I think using this control model, we showed that at least for normal, it was rather slow walking, we can assist balance control, and let's hope that we can extend this framework to make maybe even controllers that make walking more robust at some point. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer questions.
2 minutes for questions while the answers.
Okay. Yeah.
That was a great talk, thank you. I can understand that you want to find a method to help the people, but the idea of using center of mass feedback for muscle reaction,
Yeah.
do you think that it's really bio-inspired? Do we really use the center of mass?
So it's a question, so the question was whether we truly use center of mass in our human control system. And I think it's still a debated question, but there's a long series of studies, also in standing, that show that while your muscle activity after perturbations correlates very well with center of mass motion, which gives an indication that it seems to be that humans are using this. And this is not only for standing, but we also found these correlations during walking, after push and pull perturbations, but also after changing the speed of the treadmill belt. So at least it can explain a lot of human behavior, but we don't know, obviously. Yep.
Maybe I missed that part, but how many subjects participated and the p-values seem pretty low? Is it really a significant difference that you...
Yeah, so there were 12 subjects, and we found, it depends on which outcome. Oh, sorry, I can't see it anymore. So p-values varied between 0.05 till lower than 0.01. So
Okay.
there were quite some significant differences, especially for the muscle activity. There we saw like they're quite conclusive. Yeah.
What do you mean the minimal impedance?
So the minimal impedance is trying to control the exoskeleton, not applied torques to the units. It's like transparent motor. That's how you perform.
What was the characteristics of the perturbation you applied, and how did you select that particular?
The perturbation we used here was 12% of body weight, so both for pushes and pulls, was 200 millisecond block pulse, and we applied them a bit after the heel strike.
Okay, because you wanted to characterize the reflex activity as well.
Yeah, so but I think if we analyze the EMG, it seems to be that there's not a lot of reflex activity, and it's long latency, so that's why we think this center of mass feedback is really important.
Thank you.
Last question.
Are you also gonna try different perturbation scenarios, like a step down or a step up?
No, so that's something we want to do in the future. So if this control model really works well, it should also work on other tasks or other perturbations and so on.
And are you thinking of implementing some kind of feed-forward stimulation as like for the reflex initial phase to see? Because there are some research that like if we see the step down perturbation, we start to initiate this initial stimulation phase, which helps us to like engage with the perturbation.
Yeah, then I think it's really like depending on the goal of the exo, it makes it far more complex, and it probably then depends on the capability of the person that is using it, like whether it's really important to practice.
Thanks.
Yeah, can you speak a little to adaptation to this exoskeleton controller, and did you see kind of timescale differences in adapting to the exoskeleton controller between steady state and kind of your post-perturbation?
Yeah, so during this first 25 minutes steady state walking, we saw like a huge adaptation to the whole system. But then I also analyzed like the end of the adaptation, 25 minutes, and the gait cycles in between perturbations, and they were rather similar, both at the level of muscle activity and the angle we observed, angle puberty, what we have from the encoder. So I don't think they really still adapt during the adaptation protocol, but it's hard to prove these kind of things.
Second question, also?
Yeah.
Your perturbation was exerted around center of mass, is it true?
Yeah, that's true. That's another limitation.
Yeah, but-
so, or,
My question is that you measured just the soleus and tibialis, or you also measured the other muscles and you didn't find a kind of...
so for, as outcome with muscle activity, so indeed I measured tibialis, soleus, and gastroc.
Okay, and the upper leg you didn't measure.
This was already quite an extensive and elaborate experimental protocol, but yeah, it would be interesting to measure more. So, yeah.